The day they buried my son, it felt like they buried me too, but I wasn't done living. It wasn't just the chill that clawed into my spine, it was the silence. The kind that falls heavy like wet snow on branches until everything cracks. Wind whipped through the bare oaks at Rose Hill Cemetery, tearing at my overcoat like it had something against me personally. My hands clutched the folded flag they handed me like a token, as if it meant anything anymore. People murmured condolences. I didn't hear eyes glazed with polite pity, but hers, Tessa's, were bone dry. She stood across the casket, barely blinking, lips painted a shade too bold for mourning. Black wool coat buttoned to the top, chin tilted up like she was braving a storm. Except she wasn't the one being buried today. Aaron once told me, if something ever happens to me, you take care of what matters, even if it's not me. I had no idea what he meant then, but today, those words were all I had left to hold on to. He used to stand right next to me at the cemetery when we'd visit his mom's grave. He was 12. The first time he cried in front of me, knelt in front of her stone, whispering things I wasn't meant to hear. Back then, I believed I could carry his grief for him. I didn't expect to one day carry the weight of him. Mr. Miller, a voice whispered behind me. Sam Aldridge. The family lawyer, trenchcoat collar turned up, tie flapping in the wind. Let me know if you need anything. I nodded, unsure what he could possibly offer that would matter. Next to him, Lily Parks gave me a soft, fleeting look, one of the few people here who knew what Aaron was like beyond headlines and memorial programs. The priest said the final words. Ashes to ashes. Dust to dust. I heard the dull thuds of earth hitting wood. I flinched. When it was over, Tessa walked toward me, the heels of her boots clicking like a metronome, counting down to something inevitable. I'll take care of the arrangements, she said smoothly. The house. Finances. Legal stuff. Not once did she say our house, or Aaron's things, or your comfort. Just business. I'm still staying at the house, right? I asked, already regretting how small my voice sounded. I hated that I had to ask. She gave a faint smile. It wasn't cruel, it was worse. It was empty. We'll talk later, she said, and turned away before I could say his name. Back at the house, I walked through the front door, and the quiet was too loud. Aaron's guitar was still propped by the couch. A mug with the faded NASA logo sat on the counter. He'd loved space since he was a kid. My room was still intact, guest quarters, but still mine since I moved in to help during his chemo. An hour later, I heard the front door open and close. Tessa walked in, not even removing her coat. She didn't sit. She didn't ask how I was holding up. She looked around like she was seeing the place for the first time, calculating it. You should start looking for a place, she said evenly. I blinked. What? She didn't sigh, didn't soften her tone. Aaron wouldn't want you depending on me. The words didn't make sense at first, like they were spoken in a language I'd forgotten. Aaron and I had disagreements, sure, but we'd made peace. I was there for him in the hospital every damn night. I was the one who held his hand when he couldn't speak anymore. Depending on you, I said. This was his house. He asked me to stay with you. With him. Until he's gone now, she interrupted. Things have to move forward. I looked around again, trying to find something to anchor me. A memory, a trace of him. Her presence already wiped it clean. I just buried my son, I whispered. I know, she said, but her eyes said otherwise. By nightfall, I was on the front step with 2 bags, one packed, one not. She'd changed the locks after I stepped out to smoke. I didn't even realize it until I tried to open the door and felt it jam. The porch light didn't come on. Sam didn't answer his phone. Lily sent a text. You okay? Call me if you need a place. But I wasn't ready to answer yet. I wasn't ready to admit this was real. I sat on the bench out front until the sky turned purple-black, March wind cutting through every layer like razors. I tried to remember Aaron's laugh, but even that sounded distant. I looked down at the bag in my lap. No jacket. Just a pair of shoes and a framed photo of him at graduation, which she probably missed on purpose. She didn't even let me take Aaron's jacket. That's when I knew she was never really grieving. It's a strange thing to wake up in a place you didn't choose, surrounded by silence you didn't ask for. I came to with the hum of an old air conditioner rattling above the door, the kind that smelled faintly of mold and overuse. The rain slapped the motel window like it was trying to get in, and for a second I thought it might succeed. That kind of rain didn't just soak you, it got inside you like grief. Saturated everything. The blankets were too stiff. The light was too yellow. The ceiling too low. And my chest too empty. This wasn't home. Hell, it wasn't even a stopgap. It was exile. I sat up slowly, joints aching, head heavier than it should have been. The motel clock blinked 4:32 a.m., though I didn't remember setting it. I didn't remember checking in either. I recalled Lily dropping me off, her eyes kind but guarded the way people look when they don't know what to say anymore. I hadn't unpacked. My coat lay crumpled on the floor, damp from the walk-up. One bag sat on the cracked vinyl chair, half-zipped like it knew this wasn't permanent either. I pressed my palms to my face, trying to rub out the ache behind my eyes. The silence in the room was too loud again. It reminded me of the nights in Aaron's hospital room long after visiting hours ended, when the machines hummed in rhythm with his breathing, and the world outside forgot we existed. He once whispered, voice fragile like tissue paper. There are people who mourn by pretending. Don't fall for their tears. I didn't know who he meant then. But I think I do now. The memory hit me like a freight train. Aaron's pale face bathed in moonlight from the hospital window. I'd brought him a sandwich he didn't eat. He looked up from his pillow, eyes glassy but burning with clarity. She's been different, he'd said. Tessa. Since the trial. Since the money came. What trial, I asked. But he shook his head, mouth tight. Not now. I just need you to promise something. Anything. If something happens to me, don't let people rewrite who I was. And check my desk drawer at home, bottom right. There's something I meant to tell you. But I might run out of time. I remember brushing his hair back, still thick and dark despite the chemo. You're not running out. You'll be here, Aaron. But he just looked at me like he already knew better. Back in the motel room, I reached for my coat on the floor, pulling it into my lap. It was heavy with water and something else, an awkward bulge in the inner pocket. I slipped my hand inside. A white envelope. No markings on the front, but the back had been sealed, and then resealed tape over the original glue. My name was scrawled across it in Aaron's handwriting. I stared at it for longer than I should have. My fingers trembled as I broke the seal. The rain intensified, as if in sync with the sound of paper tearing. Inside one page, lined, torn from a spiral notebook. The ink slightly smudged but still legible. Dad, if you're reading this, it means I couldn't change things in time, but maybe you still can. There are things I discovered, things I can't explain fast enough. But you need to talk to Samuel Aldridge. Don't trust what people say about my will. Ask Sam. And don't let her tell you there was nothing left for you. There was. A. I reread the lines, my thumb brushing over his name like it would bring him back. This wasn't just a note. It was a flare shot into the darkness. Proof that Aaron had seen it coming. Proof that Tessa's cruelty wasn't just widowhood turning cold. I stared at the name at the bottom, Samuel Aldridge. I knew Sam. He was at the funeral, standing off to the side like a shadow. He'd given me his card, said something vague, offered help that felt hollow at the time, but Aaron had trusted him, and that meant something. I picked up my phone from the nightstand. Cracked screen. 1 bar. But the number from the business card was still in my recent calls. I hesitated. A storm howled outside, and my chest echoed it. But my thumb moved before I could stop it. I dialed the number Aaron left at the bottom of the letter, Samuel Aldridge. He didn't say, "I'm sorry for your loss." He said, "I've been expecting your call." That was the first sign something wasn't right. The second was the way Samuel Aldridge stood when I entered his office, not out of politeness but protocol. Like he'd rehearsed this moment. His law firm sat like a polished blade in downtown Chicago, all glass and dark wood, the kind of place where voices stayed low and eyes stayed sharp. I felt out of place there. My coat was still damp, my shoes still muddy from the motel parking lot. The receptionist had barely looked at me before ushering me through a sleek hallway and into Sam's private office. He stood behind a mahogany desk, hands folded in front of him, no smile, no pleasantries. "Mr. Miller," he said, "you came faster than I thought." "I didn't have anywhere else to go," I muttered. Sam gestured to the leather chair across from him. "Sit. We have a lot to talk about." There was something about his tone, measured, almost cautious, that tightened a knot in my chest. I lowered myself into the chair, the leather groaning under my weight. His office was immaculate, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a digital clock ticking softly in the corner, a decanter of something expensive untouched on a glass tray. "You said you've been expecting me?" I started. "Because of the letter." Sam nodded, then turned his monitor to face me. On the screen was a scanned copy of Aaron's signature. Beneath it, a heading: "Private Addendum to Primary Will, Conditional Clause." "I need to be careful with what I say," he explained, tapping the screen. "Aaron came to me 6 weeks before he passed. He was unsettled. He asked for changes to his estate. Quiet changes, the kind that require legal mechanisms not typically used." I leaned forward. "Why?" "Because he no longer trusted the people around him," Sam said carefully. "Especially Tessa." My throat tightened. "He told me a little. Hinted. But he didn't say what she did." Sam sighed. "I can't make formal allegations." "Not yet." But Aaron insisted on something we call Condition 17. I frowned. "Condition what?" He walked over to a file cabinet, tapped in a 4-digit code I didn't catch, and pulled out a single red folder. He didn't open it, just placed it gently on the desk between us. "It's a legal trigger," he said. "A clause that only activates under very specific circumstances." I stared at the folder, heart pounding. What kind of circumstances? Sam folded his hands again. "If you were removed from Aaron's property against his wishes. If you were excluded from access to the estate within 30 days of his passing. Then this clause activates." My blood turned to ice. "Tessa told me to leave the house the same day we buried him." Sam nodded slowly. "Then we can proceed." He didn't smile. There was no satisfaction in his eyes. Just gravity. Like this moment had been waiting just beyond the edge of tragedy for the right domino to fall. Aaron anticipated she might deviate, he added. He hoped she wouldn't. But he planned for it. I looked at the red folder, hesitant. "What's in there?" Sam didn't answer right away. Instead, he turned to the drawer behind him, unlocked it with a small brass key, and pulled out a sealed envelope. It was thicker than the one I found in my coat. Older, maybe. The kind of envelope that had weight beyond the paper inside. He slid it across the desk. "Aaron thought she might betray you. He built a failsafe. When people smile at funerals, they're either in shock or hiding something." Tessa smiled too easily. Even when the air was supposed to be heavy with grief, she wore her expression like a perfectly pressed dress, wrinkle-free, emotionless beneath the polish. I'd seen that smile before when Aaron was in the hospital after he told her to leave the room. She had stood outside the door, arms folded, lips curved in a quiet grin that didn't match the situation. It wasn't relief. It wasn't kindness. It was control. Today was no different. The backyard was strung with pastel-colored lanterns, white folding chairs, and faux rustic table settings, mason jars with wildflowers, chalkboard signs reading "In loving memory of Aaron." It looked like a spring wedding. There was even a catered brunch, spread all stainless steel trays and mimosa pitchers. It didn't feel like mourning. It felt like a branding event. From the sidewalk just beyond the iron gate, I watched the crowd gather. They were dressed nicely, no one wore black. Everyone looked carefully casual, sipping from champagne flutes, nodding as Tessa spoke to them in hushed, gracious tones. She stood under a white arch covered in ivy, holding a microphone. Aaron believed in legacy, she said, voice smooth and measured. He trusted me to carry his forward. This foundation we're launching today, the Aaron Miller Fund, is about giving back to those who need a second chance, just like he gave me mine. Applause followed. Light, polite. But my stomach turned. He gave me mine. That sentence clanged like metal inside my ribs. She was rewriting the entire story real time. I shifted behind the gate, adjusting my cap lower over my eyes. I hadn't been invited. Of course not. But I needed to see. Near the mimosa table, I caught a glimpse of Ben Torres, Aaron's old business partner. He didn't clap. In fact, he didn't move at all. His hands were buried in his pockets, shoulders tight. When his eyes met mine from across the lawn, they widened slightly, then dropped immediately. He turned away. Guilt. Before I could think further, a soft voice hissed near the fence. Frank Lily Parks appeared from the side path, her purse slung over one shoulder like she'd just excused herself from the party. Her expression flickered between worry and fury. "You shouldn't be here," she said. Then before I could respond, she added, "But I'm glad you are." "What the hell is this?" I asked. "A brunch. For him, she's erasing you from the story?" "Frank. Like you never existed?" Lily whispered. "She didn't mention you once in her speech. Not once." My throat tightened. "That doesn't surprise me. And she's already working the room," Lily added. "Talking to investors, pushing this legacy fund. She's making it sound like Aaron left it all to her." I looked past her shoulder. Tessa was laughing with two middle-aged men in suits, touching one of their arms gently, the smile still perfect. I asked, "Does she even mention his actual work?" "His robotics startup." "The patents?" Lily shook her head. "Just that he wanted to give back, vague enough to mean anything." I scanned the yard again and froze. Beyond the back patio near the detached garage, two men in blue coveralls were wheeling out equipment, heavy machinery, storage containers, Aaron's workbench. "That's his workshop," I said, stepping closer to the gate. "What is she doing with it?" Lily followed my gaze. "They've been moving things out since yesterday. Said the garage is being renovated for the foundation's office. They can't just—" I stopped. Of course she could. No one was stopping her. I took a step back, fists clenching. Every memory of Aaron soldering wires, tinkering with prototypes covered in dust and ideas, it was being scrubbed away, cleaned for her new narrative. Lily glanced around, then leaned in, voice barely a whisper. "I know someone who saw the eviction papers. She signed them before the funeral. Some wills divide money. His was meant to divide truth from lies." The envelope sat in front of me like it knew everything I didn't. Sam hadn't touched it since sliding it across the desk. He waited as he always did, with that look of measured patience, the kind only lawyers or surgeons have, like they'd rather you cut yourself open before they lift a finger. I picked it up. It felt heavier than it should have. Inside was a document, crisp and unblemished, and a thin black USB drive, the kind Aaron used to carry around on his keyring. Beneath that, tucked into a smaller flap, was a disc in a slim plastic sleeve labeled in Aaron's handwriting, Condition 17. I looked at Sam. "So what is this? Some legal trick?" "No trick," he said. "It's a clause. A very specific one." He walked to the side of the office where a second, smaller door led into what looked like a private conference room. No windows, only bookshelves, and a single round table with a mounted monitor. We stepped inside, and the click of the door behind us seemed to muffle the world. He locked it. "You said she made you leave the house?" he said, as he set the folder down. "She did it within 30 days of Aaron's death." I nodded. He didn't respond with surprise. Just took a breath, like someone who'd hoped this day wouldn't come, but had prepared for it anyway. Then Aaron's contingency activates, he said. He called it Condition 17. The name doesn't mean anything, it's just the 17th clause in the hidden annex of his estate plan. But it's the only one that matters now. He opened the folder. Inside were two identical documents. One highlighted in blue, the other with official seals I didn't recognize. Sam slid the highlighted one toward me. In short, he said, Aaron created a legal reversal. If within the first 30 days of his passing you, Frank Miller, are forcibly removed from the property or denied rights to remain, then Tessa Langford Miller forfeits all inheritance. All of it. I stared at him. He gave me everything. If she betrayed me, he nodded. She could have had it all. But only if she didn't cross that line. A part of me wanted to laugh. Not out of joy, but disbelief. Aaron had seen her clearly, maybe more than I ever did. And yet he'd still tried to give her a choice. He gave her the benefit of the doubt right up until her mask dropped. And this is enforceable? I asked. It is now, Sam said. He inserted the USB into a laptop on the table. A folder popped open, timestamps, document logs, copies of the video file. He clicked twice. The screen flickered. Then my son's face filled the room. He was thinner than I remembered, skin pale and sunken, but his eyes were sharp. He sat against a white wall wearing a plain gray t-shirt. No hospital gown, no wires, just Aaron speaking directly to the camera. Dad, he said, voice steady. If you're watching this, then she did it. I froze. Aaron leaned forward slightly. There's a lot I wish I'd said. A lot I wish I had time for. But if you're seeing this, then you already know something's off. You already know about Tessa. He paused. I tried. I did. I thought I could fix things. I thought maybe if I just left it all to her, she'd do the right thing. But people don't change unless they want to. And she doesn't want to. Another breath. His hands were clasped in his lap, but they trembled just slightly. She's good at playing roles. The grieving wife, the visionary. But underneath it, she's building something else. Something that doesn't include you, or who I was. My throat closed. I wanted to reach through the screen and pull him back. I wanted to scream, to rewind, to beg for more time. If she ever throws you out, Dad, then she's proven who she really is, Aaron said. And if you're watching this, she did. Silence. The screen went black. I didn't speak. Neither did Sam. The only sound in the room was the soft whir of the laptop's fan. The light overhead buzzed faintly. When I finally looked up, I wasn't looking at the screen. I wasn't even looking at Sam. I was looking at everything Aaron had left unfinished, everything Tessa thought she'd buried along with him. And for the first time since the funeral, I felt something other than grief. Resolve. I stared into the monitor, into the reflection of a man who had been erased, and I said quietly, "Then I'll finish what you started. To fight people like her, you don't swing, you dig." And dig I did. Back in Sam's office, the air felt heavier than before. Not with grief anymore that was behind me now. What weighed on the room was sharper, colder, the beginning of a fight. I wasn't sure what tools I had. All I knew was that Tessa had built a story, one where I was a footnote, if even that, and Aaron had left me a shovel. Where would he keep the originals, I asked Sam. Papers, backup drives, anything not digital. Sam rubbed his temples. Aaron was paranoid about firewalls. He didn't trust cloud storage after 2021. He had a storage unit somewhere near Logan Square. I helped him set it up. We'll go. I nodded. Today. Before we could move, a knock tapped softly on the glass wall. Claire, Sam's junior paralegal, poked her head in mid-20s, glasses slipping down her nose, a file in one hand and curiosity in the other. "You asked me to flag anything unusual in Aaron Miller's medical records," she said, stepping inside. I pulled what was available from the hospital archive. "Something's off." Sam raised an eyebrow. Off how Claire placed the folder on the table, flipping it open to a printout. His mental capacity status, the legal indicator for whether he was considered competent to make decisions, was altered after his time of death. The timestamp doesn't match the system logs. Someone accessed the hospital's legal portal and marked him as mentally unfit. 2 hours after he passed. My pulse slowed, then picked up like a drumline. Why would anyone do that? I asked, already knowing the answer. To invalidate a will, Sam said. If they claimed Aaron wasn't mentally fit when he made changes to his estate, then the newer documents could be tossed. Claire finished. If no one noticed the discrepancy. Or if everyone involved just trusted the system, I muttered. Sam stood up. We're going to the storage unit. Now. The place was as nondescript as it was forgotten, a row of gray roll-up doors beneath a cracked "You Store It" sign on an industrial street behind an old train depot. The cold wind still hadn't let up, and it sliced through my jacket as we stepped out of Sam's car. The unit was small, but packed tight. Labeled boxes, old monitors, notebooks, sealed envelopes, Aaron's mind in analog form. He'd left breadcrumbs here. Sam handed me a pair of gloves. Start with the boxes marked Beta Torque. That was the name of his first tech prototype before the startup took off. I nodded and got to work. I was on the third box when someone cleared their throat behind me. Ben Torres. He looked older than he had at the brunch. His shoulders hunched like he hadn't slept. He wore a coat too light for the weather and eyes too heavy for the daylight. I figured you'd come here, he said. Aaron told me once, if things ever went sideways, this was where to start. I stood brushing dust off my hands. Why are you here? Because I've known for a long time something was wrong with her, he said. Tessa didn't just lie, she isolated him. I think she made him believe you were the problem. He tried to keep peace, but he wasn't blind. Sam looked up. You willing to help? Ben nodded. He was my friend before he was my business partner. I should have done more. Let me do more now. We dug for 2 hours. Ben found a draft copy of a second will notarized but never filed. It granted 51% of Aaron's intellectual property rights to me, and the rest split between Ben and a charity fund not in Tessa's name. She had to know about this, Ben muttered. This would have gutted her plans. I flipped through a black ledger with Aaron's neat handwriting. It tracked every dollar of his personal investments, and the last few pages had large red X's through items marked erase, all dated just 2 weeks before he died. She was scrubbing the trail, I whispered. Sam's phone buzzed. He stepped away to answer. Claire was on the line. I couldn't hear her, but Sam's face paled. He hung up slowly. She pulled a fast one, he said. That medical alteration, it's tied to a login credential. Under your name, Frank. My heart stopped. What, she forged an access log to make it look like you changed his status? That was more than betrayal. That was a setup. Ben stared at the floor for a long second, then looked up at me with a new expression, not anger, but clarity. She didn't just kick you out, he said. She was trying to kill every trace that Aaron ever trusted you. She didn't see it coming. That made it land harder. The courthouse wasn't built for poetry. Gray corridors hummed with tired fluorescent lights, the smell of burnt coffee and old upholstery clinging to every hallway. But something about that morning felt different, cleaner, like a page being turned or a wound reopening with purpose. Sam walked beside me, briefcase in one hand, his phone in the other. We didn't talk much. We didn't need to. The weight of the documents inside that case spoke louder than words: the draft will, the altered medical logs, and Aaron's video. The case had begun. Courtroom C12, he said, nodding toward a steel door. Judge Winters. Quiet, efficient. Doesn't like theatrics. Good, I said. We're not here to perform. Sam had spent the last 48 hours filing a motion for emergency injunctive relief, a legal freeze on all activity related to Aaron's estate. It wouldn't decide anything final, but it would slow Tessa down, force her to show her cards. And that's exactly what she never wanted. Inside the courtroom, only a clerk and the judge were present. Sam laid out our evidence calmly, methodically. He spoke of altered medical records, suspicious timelines, and most of all, Aaron's own recorded words. He didn't name Tessa yet, not directly. He didn't need to. The documents did the pointing. Judge Winters tapped her pen against the desk, eyes unreadable. "You understand the weight of what you're alleging, I do," Sam said. "And I have more coming. But we request a temporary freeze to preserve the integrity of the estate and prevent irreversible actions." She looked at me next. "Mr. Miller, this is your son's estate. Are you claiming you were wrongfully excluded?" "No, Your Honor," I said. "I'm claiming my son tried to protect his legacy and someone's been trying to erase it." 30 minutes later, the gavel fell. Motion granted. Across town, the paper hit Tessa like a brick. She was in the kitchen of what used to be Aaron's house, now a sterile designer haven that looked like no one actually lived there. A brunch meeting had just ended, flutes of half-finished mimosas still sweating on the counter. Margaret Sloane, Tessa's attorney, stood at the edge of the island, tablet in hand, her jaw tight. "An emergency injunction," Tessa hissed. How Margaret didn't answer right away. She was scrolling, reading, eyes scanning every line like a woman doing damage control in real time. "He had help," she said finally. "Sam Aldridge. And he brought receipts. This wasn't supposed to happen." Margaret glanced up, lowering her voice. "And your tone's not helping. You said you wanted quiet. You said he'd be too broken to fight." Tessa threw her hands up. "I was being practical." "And now you need to be careful," Margaret warned. "This could get worse and louder." Back at the courthouse steps, cameras had already begun gathering. Sam had hoped we could exit unnoticed, but someone had leaked the motion, and by the time we stepped outside, the press had questions. I didn't want to speak. I didn't plan to. But something about the way the microphones stretched toward us like they were listening for the first time shifted something inside me. "I'm not fighting for money," I said, voice steady. "I'm fighting because my son trusted me more than she ever thought he would." That one line went further than I expected. By that evening, headlines were swirling: father challenges, widow over will. Estate frozen amid allegations of fraud. Tessa's pristine narrative, the loyal wife, the grieving widow, was cracking. And behind that crack was something jagged and raw. Later that night, Margaret poured herself a drink in Tessa's living room, while the younger woman paced like a trapped animal. "I'll clean this up," Margaret said. "But you need to stop giving him ammo." Tessa stared out the window, fists clenched, heels digging into the rug like claws. Then, with no warning, she grabbed a heavy glass from the bar cart and slammed it onto the table. The sound shattered the silence. "If he wants war, I'll bring the battlefield. You don't win courtrooms with fists, you win with receipts." The war room didn't look like one. It smelled like printer toner and stress, and sounded like keys tapping faster than thoughts could form. Sam's office had transformed into a maze of folders, redacted copies, digital backups, and handwritten notes from Aaron's storage unit. Every surface was layered in the past, not just Aaron's, but mine too. Claire moved between the piles with the precision of someone who knew where every dagger was buried, even if she hadn't thrown them. Sam sat at the head of the table, glasses off, rubbing the bridge of his nose. I sat there too, but not as the broken father anymore. I was the executor of my son's truth. Claire slid a file toward us. These were in Aaron's backup email account, not the one Tessa had access to. I opened the folder and saw a series of exchanges between Aaron and Tessa, some dated just 3 months before he died. The tone wasn't loving, it was cold, transactional. In one email, Tessa had written, "You need to stop thinking with your heart. You act like sentimentality is a virtue. It's weakness, and I won't carry dead weight anymore." I didn't breathe for a full 5 seconds. "Keep going," Sam said. In another message, Aaron responded simply, "If something happens to me, you won't control everything. I've made sure of it." Claire looked at me. He really did. Ben arrived just after lunch, clutching his phone like it held the last proof of God. His face looked like it hadn't smiled in days, but his eyes were determined. "I have voicemails," he said, handing the phone to Sam. "Aaron left them for me late-night calls when he couldn't sleep. I thought he was venting. Now I know he was documenting." Sam hit play. Erin's voice crackled through the speaker, tired, strained, but clear. "She keeps asking about what happens to the company if I die, not in a concerned way, in a calculating way. I've made changes. If you're hearing this, tell my dad. He's the only one I trust not to sell me off in pieces." Another one even later. "She says I'm too emotional to lead, that I should have let her run the pitch meetings. But I know she wants control, not partnership. If she ever turns on me, everything I've set up triggers. Tell Sam. Tell my dad." Ben leaned back, arms crossed. "I'll testify. You say the word." Sam nodded. "That's going to matter. But the public won't care about audio files if she controls the narrative." And that's exactly what she was working on. At the other side of the battlefield, Tessa stood in a sleek office on the top floor of a PR firm downtown. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over the skyline, but her attention was fixed on the woman across from her, hair-tied tight blazer sharp enough to cut glass. Vivian Meeks was a fixer, not a publicist. She specialized in narrative redirection code for spinning mess into martyrdom. "They're making you the villain," Vivian said. "We change that." Tessa sipped her espresso. "How you're a widow, a philanthropist, a woman grieving under pressure. And he." Vivian tapped a folder with my face on the front. "He's unstable, obsessive, possibly senile, and you were kind enough to house him until he became aggressive." Margaret, seated nearby, stayed silent but didn't object. "I want his motives questioned," Tessa said flatly. "Every time he speaks, I want people to wonder if it's for justice or for money." "You'll have it," Vivian replied. "Within 48 hours, no one will remember what his son said. They'll only remember what he's trying to take." Back in the war room, Sam had just finished drafting the next set of court motions when his phone dinged. He opened the message, frowned, then turned the screen toward me. An email from Margaret Sloan. Subject: withdrawal. Strongly advised body. If your client does not withdraw all legal action within 72 hours, we will begin filing to unseal all records associated with his late wife's 1993 vehicular negligence case, including sealed testimony. He may be fighting for his son's legacy, but I assure you we will burn his to the ground first." I stared at the screen for a long time, feeling the years crash down like a tidal wave. My wife, Susan. She'd spent her life trying to outrun that one mistake, and I had spent mine protecting the world from ever knowing it happened. Claire whispered, "They're digging now too." Sam's voice was flat but firm. "This isn't just a case anymore, it's a reckoning." I didn't respond right away, but I knew what I'd say when the time came. Because there are two kinds of people in war: those who attack to win, and those who defend to remember. I thought she'd go quiet. She went nuclear. The hotel ballroom wasn't set up for mourning. It was dressed like a gala, pristine linens, gold-trimmed name placards, bottled water lined up like soldiers at each seat. Cameras were already rolling when I saw the first live clip stream onto the cafe television. I sat in a booth near the window, nursing a bitter coffee that had gone cold 2 sips ago. Lily slid into the seat across from me, her scarf pulled tight, despite the warm spring breeze wafting through the door. Her eyes didn't leave the screen either. Tessa stood at the podium in a fitted navy dress, one hand resting over her heart like she'd lost something sacred. Margaret Sloan hovered behind her, giving a practiced nod to the camera crew. "My husband, Aaron Miller," Tessa began, "was a brilliant man, a complicated man. But in his final months he struggled. He was under immense pressure physically and mentally. And now, after his passing, that pain has been twisted into a narrative I can't remain silent about." I blinked once, twice, then leaned forward. While I respect the grief of those closest to him, she continued, some have chosen to wage a campaign that's not about love, but control. I have tried to remain private, but the recent legal actions against me leave me no choice. Margaret stepped forward and handed her a document. These, Tessa said, lifting a stack of stapled pages, are the clinical observations of Dr. Camille Rhodes Aaron's psychiatrist. They show a clear diagnosis of dissociative episodes and paranoia. These episodes led him to make erratic decisions, including unauthorized legal changes. I could feel Lily's eyes on me. I didn't return the glance. My hands clenched around the cup until the lid caved in slightly. She's calling him unstable, I murmured. He left everything behind to protect us, and she's rewriting him, Lily said. Her voice was quiet but edged in steel. The press conference went on, reporters tossing softball questions, Tessa painting herself as the victim of elder abuse, accusing me of emotional coercion and financial desperation. Margaret added that recent attempts to access the estate were under review due to security concerns surrounding Mr. Miller's behavior. They played footage, grainy, selectively cut clips from the courthouse steps of me confronting the press, anger flashing across my face. The news anchor's voice followed shortly after reading from a breaking alert. Frank Miller, father of the late Aaron Miller, was denied access to filing a second injunction today, after security staff were instructed to maintain distance for safety purposes. No charges were filed. Lily's expression twisted. This is character assassination. Plain and calculated. She's trying to kill him twice, I whispered. I stood from the booth and moved toward the cafe window. Outside, life moved as if nothing had changed. A man walked his dog. A couple argued in hushed tones. A cyclist sped past, music blasting from a speaker strapped to his chest. The world was busy surviving while mine was being unraveled in public view. Behind me, Lily said my name. I turned. She pulled a flash drive from her coat pocket and slid it across the table toward me. It was small, black, unmarked, the kind that held secrets too dangerous to name. Ben said this was the only thing Aaron was afraid to let Tessa see. The dead can't testify. But sometimes they leave behind one last word. The hum of the projector was the only sound in the room. Outside Sam's office, Chicago exhaled its late-night breath in traffic whispers and neon flickers. Inside, we sat still, as if Aaron himself had walked in and demanded our silence. The image sharpened Aaron sitting in a plain chair against a neutral wall, wearing a soft blue hospital gown. His face looked thinner than I remembered. But his eyes, they carried the same stubborn fire, the kind that refused to die just because the clock said it was time. If you're watching this, he began, then you already know something went wrong. I gripped the armrest. Lily sat beside me, her hand resting gently on her knee, unmoving. Sam stood off to the side, arms crossed as if guarding the room with more than law. Aaron exhaled on screen. I had to make this privately. No lawyers, no witnesses. Just me. Because I knew there was a chance my voice wouldn't be enough if things turned sideways. He paused, looked down, then back up. I love my wife. I did. But love doesn't mean trust. And lately, I couldn't tell the difference. The breath in my lungs caught. She started making choices for me before I even knew they needed to be made. I signed things I didn't remember. People were visiting, then suddenly gone. Ben stopped calling. Dad, I know you saw it. You never said anything, but I saw it in your face. He leaned forward in the frame. I left instructions with Sam, a contingency. I called it Condition 17. If I died and you were removed from the house, everything changes. My assets freeze. Her claims become invalid. Aaron's voice trembled just slightly. I needed to believe she wouldn't do it, but a part of me knew. He reached off screen, grabbed a folder, and held it up. These are letters from doctors, time-stamped emails, phone calls I recorded. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't incompetent. I was scared. Lily covered her mouth. Aaron's eyes welled not with self-pity, but with urgency. If she says I was unstable, show this. If she claims you're lying, show them this. I didn't want to leave behind a war, Dad, but I had to leave behind the truth. He swallowed hard. Don't let her rewrite me. The screen went black. No credits, no music. Just the whir of the projector cooling down and the ache in my chest that refused to go away. Sam reached over and turned on the lamp. The room returned to color, but nothing felt real anymore. My hands trembled slightly, resting in my lap. I wasn't crying, not the way you'd expect a father to cry. This wasn't about loss. It was about fire. You didn't just leave me a will, I whispered to the darkness. You left me a war. Sam walked to his desk. He pulled a file folder from his drawer, flipped it open, and laid down a court summons. The date was circled in red. This video changes everything. Get ready, the court date is set. Truth is like a slow earthquake, quiet, but it shifts everything underneath. The courtroom didn't move, but I did. From the moment Judge Ramirez walked in, robed and unreadable, I felt every muscle in my body tense like taut rope. It wasn't fear. It was pressure. Pressure to hold it together when the world expected me to shatter. Tessa sat across the aisle, immaculate as always. Her dark suit was sharp, her posture regal, but her eyes flicked. Nervous. Margaret Sloane leaned over to whisper something, but Tessa didn't respond. For the first time, she wasn't the one controlling the room. Sam adjusted his tie with deliberate calm and rose. Your Honor, he began. We call Benjamin Torres to the stand. Ben walked in slow, his eyes briefly meeting mine with a quiet nod. He took the oath, sat down, and cleared his throat. I worked with Aaron for 6 years. We co-founded Calix Tech. He was my friend. Until he started pulling away. Sam paced with care. Why did he pull away? Ben hesitated. Tessa. She'd come to meetings, question his decisions, override his calls. At first it seemed like concern. But then Aaron started changing his passwords, avoiding calls. He told me once, he didn't trust his own wife with his legacy. A ripple of whispers moved through the benches. The press scribbled faster. Sam held up his hand. Permission to play an audio file from Mr. Torres's phone, verified and time-stamped by forensic analysts. Granted, Judge Ramirez said. The courtroom went still again. Aaron's voice crackled through the speakers, weary but unmistakable. Ben, I think she's using my meds to make decisions for me. There are documents I never signed. Dad doesn't know yet. I need time to fix it before... The file ended abruptly. The silence afterward roared. Tessa shifted in her seat, lips pressed into a hard line. Margaret scribbled furiously on her notepad. Next, Sam said, nodding toward Claire. She stepped forward, arms full of documents. These are hospital access logs and power of attorney requests, she said, handing copies to the judge. You'll notice a revoked POA form dated 3 days before Aaron's passing, initiated by Mrs. Langford Miller, without Aaron's signature. Judge Ramirez looked up sharply. Are you suggesting this document is forged? Claire nodded. The digital record shows it was submitted using credentials belonging to a nurse who was off duty that entire week. Another tremor under the floorboards. Sloane stood, her voice sharp. Objection circumstantial. Sam stepped in. Not when considered with the video testimony. That name, that weight dropped in the courtroom like a hammer. Ramirez frowned. You're referring to the pre-recorded statement, yes, Your Honor. We request its admission into evidence under Exception 804B, declarant unavailable due to death, with corroborating circumstances indicating trustworthiness. There was a pause. A long one. Then, admitted. Tessa's breath caught audibly. Margaret leaned toward her with urgency, whispering behind her hand. I didn't need to hear it. I could read her lips. You need to settle, or you're going to prison. The courtroom went silent, as if the dead had just entered. It wasn't the kind of silence that fell naturally. It had weight, thickness. The air itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting for a voice it had no business hearing. Sam adjusted the projector with a soft click, dimming the overhead lights. The wooden walls of the courtroom glowed faintly with the flicker of the screen. No one moved. Not the judge, not the journalists, not even Tessa. Especially not Tessa. The image of Aaron appeared slowly grainy, then sharp. He was seated in what looked like Sam's old conference room. Clean-shaven, thinner than I remembered. His eyes, they still held fire. "Hi," Aaron began, and I could feel my fingers curl around the bench. "If you're watching this, it means things didn't go the way I hoped. It means I ran out of time, but I didn't run out of clarity." He paused, swallowing hard. "This is for my father. And for anyone who ever wondered whether I saw what was happening around me. I did." He looked straight into the camera. "I love you, Dad. I know we didn't always say it. But I trusted you more than anyone. That's why I left what I did behind, not to punish anyone, but to protect what mattered." A few murmurs rippled through the benches behind me. Aaron continued, his voice steady. "Condition 17 was my last resort. I didn't want to use it, but I feared Tessa might not grieve the way people expect, that she might act quickly, that she might not want my father around. If she did any of those things, the estate would revert. That's what this clause is for." On the other side of the aisle, Tessa sat stone still, her jaw clenched. The tear slipping down her cheek was slow, deliberate, performed. Aaron's eyes darkened in the recording. There were moments, small ones, when I knew. When she moved my medications around. When I found signed documents I never touched. When she said, "Your father's past will ruin what we're building." The lights from the projector danced across the judge's expression, hardening with each word. Aaron leaned closer in the video. His voice dropped. "Dad, if she's watching this too, tell her I'm not afraid anymore." Tessa's breath hitched. A sharp sob escaped her lips, and suddenly she buried her face in her hands. The timing was too precise, too polished. Margaret placed a gentle hand on her back, whispering something that sounded rehearsed. The courtroom didn't move. No one handed her a tissue. No one comforted her. They watched. Sam reached forward, clicked the remote. The screen went black. The silence after was different than before. It was colder, sharper. Every corner of that room had heard what they needed to hear. Judge Ramirez leaned forward, clearing his throat. "We'll reconvene for ruling tomorrow." And then, under my breath, barely louder than a memory, I whispered to the darkened room, "We're almost there, son." Her voice didn't break because she lost. It broke because no one believed her anymore. The gavel came down with a hollow thud that echoed through my ribs. Judge Ramirez didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The weight of his words did all the shouting. "This court finds the secondary will referred to as Condition 17 to be valid under Illinois law and executed within full legal capacity of the deceased. As such, all assets of the estate revert to the named beneficiary Franklin Miller. Mrs. Tessa Langford Miller is hereby stripped of all claim and placed under preliminary investigation for potential document forgery and obstruction." No one gasped. No one moved. The sound was drained out of the courtroom like someone had opened a vacuum and sucked the air straight from our lungs. Tessa sat still, lips parted but silent. Her hands trembled slightly, the veneer finally cracking. She didn't cry this time. The tears were gone. Only disbelief remained, the silent horror of someone who was certain the story would end differently. Sam didn't smile. Neither did I. Victory was supposed to taste sweet. But this was ash and wet stone. A victory earned at the edge of grief. As we stood, the judge nodded to me directly. "Mr. Miller, would you like to address the court regarding damages?" Sam had suggested we pursue them. Punitive costs, defamation, emotional distress. The case could have gone on for months more, could have buried her deeper. I stepped forward, adjusting the collar of my weathered coat. "No, Your Honor, I'm not seeking damages." Judge Ramirez arched an eyebrow. Would you like to clarify why I turned not to the bench, but to the gallery, to the cameras pointed through the crack in the door, to the reporters lining the benches, to the faces that had watched this all like a show? She thought I wanted money. She thought this was about pride. But I never wanted her to pay with cash. I wanted her to know she never had control. Let her walk out with nothing that's justice enough. Tessa didn't look at me. She stared straight ahead as if hoping the doors might vanish, that this day might dissolve like a nightmare. But it didn't. Outside, the sky had broken into a slow, angry rain, not a downpour, just enough to smear makeup and soak through fabric. The crowd outside waited. Reporters' umbrellas, camera flashes, already firing before we stepped past the courthouse doors. Sam shielded me on one side. Lily had her hand on my arm. Then came Tessa just a few steps behind. Microphones thrust toward her. Lights clicked on. A dozen questions flung through the air like stones. Mrs. Langford, did you forge the medical reports? Do you have a response to Aaron's testimony? Why did you evict his father days after the funeral? Tessa flinched. Her lips parted, and for a moment she looked like a child, cornered, terrified, desperate to rewrite the ending. I was the only one who truly loved him. It came out shrill, sharp, like glass underfoot. But the silence that followed was louder than any scream. Not a single camera dropped. Not a single face softened. They didn't believe her. Not anymore. And she knew it. She tried to walk, heels clicking against the wet concrete. Margaret Sloane followed for a few paces, then stopped. Her folder still tucked under one arm. Tessa. She turned soaked and breathless. Margaret's voice was calm, unshaken. I don't represent liars. And then she walked away. No further words, no backwards glance. I didn't speak again that day. I didn't need to. Tessa had already lost. Not just the estate, not just her grip on the narrative. She lost the one thing she'd spent the whole battle clinging to, the power to control how people saw her. And once that was gone, there was nothing left to steal. Coming home isn't always a return. Sometimes it's a rebirth. The house looked smaller than I remembered. Maybe it was the silence. Or maybe because for the first time in weeks there was no war to fight, no courtroom, no lies to dismantle, no reporters waiting to spin grief into scandal. I stood at the front door for longer than I needed to. The key Sam gave me slid easily into the lock. It turned without resistance, like the house had been holding its breath too. It didn't smell like Aaron anymore. The scents had faded: cedar motor oil, those ridiculous colognes he bought and never wore. But the bones of the place remained. And in those bones, I could still feel him. I moved slowly through the living room. The charity plaques Tessa had mounted were gone. So were the pictures of her standing beside Aaron at black tie events. But one thing remained: a single photo tucked into the corner of the bookshelf. Aaron, age 10, covered in sawdust, beaming next to the crooked birdhouse we built together. I carried it with me out to the garage. The workshop door creaked. The scent hit me before I even stepped inside: wood shavings, old paint, metal. It hadn't been touched since the day Aaron collapsed. The dust coated every surface like time itself had paused out of respect. On the workbench, still where he left it, sat the model plane we never finished. One wing half-painted, the glue cap missing. I ran my hand along its frame and whispered, "You never did have patience for sanding." The wrench lay in its usual spot. His favorite. The one he used even when he didn't need to. He said it made him feel like Dad. Like me. That's when Lily arrived. She didn't knock, just walked around from the garden path with a thermos in one hand and two mismatched bowls in the other. "You look like you've been arguing with ghosts," she said gently. "Maybe I have," I replied. We sat on the back porch, soup steaming in our bowls, twilight stretching across the yard. Lily didn't talk much. That's one of the things I'd come to appreciate about her. She didn't fill the air just to keep it from feeling empty. After we ate, she placed a folded envelope on the table. Claire dropped this off earlier. She said you'd want to see it yourself. Inside was a short legal form barely a paragraph long confirming the official registration of the Aaron Miller Foundation Scholarship Fund. At the bottom, two signatures, mine and Claire's. I didn't think I'd have anything left to give after all this, I admitted. Lily reached over her hand, warm over mine. You gave him justice, Frank. Now you're giving others a future. That's more than most people ever do. After she left, I returned to the garage. The evening air was thick with that late spring stillness, as if even the wind had grown respectful. I took out an old notebook, the kind Aaron used to sketch in, and began writing. Not plans or calculations, not court notes or memories twisted by grief. A letter. Hey kid, I began. The shop still smells like you. I found the plane. Still ugly as ever. I'm going to finish it, don't worry. I'll leave the wing crooked just how you liked it. I wrote until my hand cramped. Until my eyes blurred. Before I left the garage, I placed the photo on the workbench and set the wrench beside it. Still waiting for you to come fix what I can't. The words didn't echo. They didn't need to. They landed. Later that night, I sat on the porch steps, coffee going cold beside me when the mail arrived late as usual. Among the bills and flyers was a crisp white envelope with the Northwestern University seal. Inside, a single line typed neatly across the top. Your application to host the scholarship ceremony has been accepted. Justice doesn't just end the story, it writes a better one for those who come next. The quad at Northwestern buzzed with quiet anticipation. Rows of folding chairs stretched across the lawn, their white fabric catching in the breeze like sails. A small podium stood beneath a modest arch of flowers, nothing grand, but everything intentional. The banner behind it read, "The Aaron Miller Foundation Building Futures." I stood just off stage watching the crowd settle. Most of them didn't know Aaron. Students, faculty, press. They came for the scholarship, for the symbolism, maybe even the free food. But a few knew. Claire was there, dressed simply, clipboard in hand. Ben sent a donation and an apology he couldn't make it. Lily sat in the third row, her smile quiet, her hands folded neatly in her lap. Then it was time. I walked to the podium, notes trembling slightly in my fingers, though not from nerves. From something heavier, something older. My son. I began, voice slower than I intended, was a builder of machines, of dreams, and of people. The microphone caught my pause. I didn't rush to fill it. He didn't just invent things, he believed in building things that would last. And when he knew his time was running out, he made sure that what mattered wouldn't disappear with him. A murmur from the crowd, respectful, focused. This scholarship isn't about what was taken. It's about what he gave and what we can give because of him. I motioned to Claire, who brought forward a small envelope and handed it to the young woman standing near the steps. She was maybe 19. Nervous. Her black shoes polished to a shine that didn't quite match the worn edges of her blazer. Her name was Jada Reyes, top of her class, first in her family to attend college. She took the envelope with both hands like it was something fragile and holy. I leaned toward her just enough for the mic to miss it. You're going to do great things. She smiled, eyes wet, and nodded without words. Applause followed. Cameras flashed. Reporters scribbled quotes. But I barely noticed. The ceremony moved on without me. Speeches. Thanks. A closing from the dean. I found my way to the edge of the crowd, slipping out before the noise caught up to me. By dusk, I was back home. The light through the garage windows hit the workbench just right, soft-angled, golden. I sat where Aaron used to sit. The model plane rested in front of me, finally complete. The wing glued. The tail stabilized. Paint dried. I lifted it gently and carried it to the upstairs window, the one that overlooked the garden he used to mow on Sunday mornings. The wind nudged the curtains open like an invitation. I held the plane in both hands. It's flying, Aaron. Just like you said it would. I let it go. It caught the wind, dipped once, then glided out and away, dipping, rising, disappearing past the hedges, with a grace that felt impossible for something made of wood and memory. I didn't follow it. Instead, I sat back in the chair by the window and pulled out my phone. A message from Claire lit up the screen. "Look who stopped by the booth." Attached was a photo Jada beaming beneath the scholarship banner, holding her envelope like a trophy. The smile wasn't for the camera. It was for something else. Something rooted. I stared at the picture for a long time before answering. Let's see how far this can go. Every single view means a meal for someone in need. Just by watching this video, you're giving warmth, hope, and a full plate to those less fortunate. So watch now, share now, subscribe to the channel, and let's spread love together.